I just want to say, don't read that first prologue.
Really?
Not your first time reading this book.
Okay.
No one listens to me when I tell them that.
No, and that's
no one.
Yeah, right. I think that
It's easy. Just don't read the first prologue.
We can talk about that more about like what the different prologues are in the content of the episode. But I feel like as a cold open, I just want to start by my favorite low effort meme with the Stormlight Archive is the quote unquote, like any good Vorin man, I listen to the audiobooks.
Your favorite joke.
It is my very favorite low effort joke. And you see it all the time on like Reddit or whatever, any texts, like if you're texting your friends or shooting a message, whatever. Because if you're on the
audiobook, if you're texting, then you're not a good Vorin, are you?
Hush. You can tell when somebody's reading the audiobook because there's so many complicated names in here, or like where it's just not intuitive how it's supposed to be pronounced. So like, it's just
oh yeah, Reddit has a lot of fun with people like. For audiobook listeners, you try. Let us know how you think things are.
Yeah. So.
Always a good time.
Yeah. So, I don't know. That's my favorite low effort meme out of Stormlight Archive. That is also completely non-spoilerific. So, hello and welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide to the Cosmere for the Cosmere Curious. Today. I'm your co-host, the illiterate Nick Gorman.
And I'm your other co-host, AJ Gorman.
Yeah, today we're discussing The Way of Kings, book 1 in the Stormlight Archive.
My favorite book.
It's just your favorite book?
Yeah, it's just my favorite book.
Nice. But this is our spoiler-free episode, so we're, stuff around.
Well, this is pre-read.
Yeah, it's our pre-read. I guess at the very end of the episode, we'll include some stuff for rereaders about things to watch out for because there's so much foreshadowing for future books and even across the Cosmere. But that's end of the episode.
But I guess the main thing I want to convey here in this episode is if anybody who feels daunted by starting the Stormlight Archive, let's put you a little bit at ease today.
Right. And there's a lot to be daunted about, right? How many you've got the paper. How many pages is it? Is it 2,000 or 1,200 or something like that? It's over 1,000. It's over 1,000.
Yeah. It's a lot.
The audiobook is 47 or something hours. It's a big chunk. It's a big chunkin' book.
That's only if you listen at 1.0 speed.
Yeah. Right.
Which apparently we don't do that anymore.
Well, whatever. Sometimes you want to stay clear, and sometimes you want to know what happened next, right?
I know, but even when I know what happens next, I'm still excited.
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's a lot to savor here.
I guess one of the things that this book is known for is it has a very slow beginning.
That's just sort of Brando Sando in general, where there's a lot of laying groundwork.
Yeah.
And then there's the Sanderlanche.
But also all right, so let's talk a little bit about the series setup.
Yeah.
All right. So this series has 2 arcs. And each arc is 5 books. So there are a total of 10 books planned. So as of this recording, because we are recording in January 2025, the first arc has been fully published. I forgot where I was going with this. So if you think of it from an arc perspective with 5 books, the beginning is the first book.
Yep.
Which means that the slowness of Brandon Sanderson through his beginnings is this almost like this entire book.
I guess I think
it is the slowest of the 5.
I feel like a different way to explain it is, to get the same point across. It's Brandon Sanderson, he is a very popular author at this point, right?
Yeah.
He to get into sort of the meta commentary about the book, right? It's to his publisher to be published, and they said, "No, dear God, it's too long, it's too ambitious. Like you need a little bit more rapport with your readers first." And so, like he finished the Mistborn trilogy. He
got sidetracked with Wheel of Time.
Got sidetracked, but also like got a big following and like proved that he knows how to finish great, opuses, right? And so because of that, his publisher was they were willing to take the to take the investment. And so like if the Cosmere as a whole is this great magnum opus, Stormlight Archive is like a mini version of that, where it's
the foundation of the Cosmere story.
More like
it's one of the anchoring series.
Yeah, it's like one of the main ones, but it's it's his most ambitious. It's, in my opinion, the things that you like the most about Brandon Sanderson are going to be most done here, right? That
are going to be well showcased in this series.
And the things that you like the least, or the things that are the worst, are probably also going to stand out the most here. So, like, if you don't like how long he takes to get to that fucking Sanderlanche, like,
it feels so satisfying, though.
It does, right? But if you are, if you don't want to read, like there's a couple hundred pages of like introduction and like a big plot hooks, right? Like right away. But then there is like, 700 pages of like laying groundwork and like slow ramp up intention. But like, if you just don't have that kind of patience, if you're not willing to invest that into it, like this is probably not the series for you, or like at least.
But I want to stress so much. It is so worth it.
Like I'm pretty sure this is his most popular series, right?
I thought Mistborn was.
It's got to be between those two.
Well, anyway, so for some more publishing backstory, so Brandon was a struggling writer for many years, and he was writing books that he thought would get published and submitting those, and was getting nothing.
Yeah.
He kind of had a moment of just like, you know what? Screw trying to actually get published. I'm just going to write the book that I want to write, that I've been dying to get to.
The epic fantasy, the epic Lord of the Rings, the Wheel of Time, the big chonkers.
Yes. So this is that series. He started writing.
Yeah.
Stormlight when he gave up on trying to get published.
Like the version that he wrote when he was just kind of over it and wasn't even trying to get published anymore, that is available now, but it's called The Way of Kings Prime, and it's explicitly non-canonical, and like you can go through Brandon Sanderson's Dragonsteel company and buy that. It's got some elements of it, but some bit, they've got some common stories, some common characters and some common arcs, but they all have different names. The Way of, the Prime version is, it was never edited. It's real rough. I've never read it, but like, it's labeled under Sanderson Curiosities, right? It's not, it's
don't expect it. Yeah. Don't expect to finish.
If you're reading that one, you're in the wrong podcast, because we're a Cosmere casual, and The Way of Kings Prime is for the super fans. That's the way I think of it.
That's a fair statement, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly haven't read it. Apparently, I don't even know what's in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about that there's a total of 10 books, and half of them are published. Brandon thinks of them as two different arcs. There is 10 years.
I don't know. We haven't
10 years between.
Whatever. That's for
10 years between arcs.
When we get there.
The prologue of each book shows the same day from a different viewpoint.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into anything else.
Okay.
But I'm just saying he does a really nice job of kind of connecting.
Revisiting the same important events from different points of view. That's true. And it also like really leads, the series really lends itself well to rereading, even more than other series in the Cosmere, which is like a really high bar to clear. Like the Cosmere in general lends itself well to rereading. Stormlight Archives like
there's so much.
There's so much, and like it's a delight to find something new every time, in my opinion.
And to have, I like going back to a familiar story, but that's definitely something I've noticed as I've gotten older. I like having a familiar story.
gotten older.
I know. I mean, when I was younger, it was just like, no, give me a new story. Each book kind of focuses on the flashbacks of one of the main viewpoint characters.
Yeah, there's a main character for each book, but also there's main characters.
And there's lots of kind of jumping between different points of time. It is definitely not a linear storytelling. I'm gonna try really hard not get into the prologues. Let's
the prelude.
The preludes.
So what do you want to talk about?
Certainly not someone who's coming in a recording session.
Close that door.
Let's talk about some trigger warnings. Because this is a big epic. There's going to be a lot of things in it.
Well, I think it's more about like where there's
suicide, a lot of mental instability, mental health issues.
Well, like I guess just to tick through them off. One very important character is depressed and sometimes suicidal. Several of the characters are soldiers and have PTSD. One character has dissociative identity disorder. Several have addictions. There's a lot of discussion about abusive childhoods, and like over the course of series, we have characters lose limbs or take serious head wounds and take someone to adjust with disability.
And if I complained about violence in Mistborn, there's a lot more.
I think
it does feel different. Like I'm much more comfortable reading Stormlight than I am Mistborn for the like violence wise, but there is still a whole lot more of it.
Mistborn, I feel like, has a lot of like assassins and torturing kind of things.
But Kelsier has there's a lot of brutality.
Yeah. Whereas a lot of the characters in Stormlight Archive, like they're soldiers, they're warriors. And a lot of the events take place on battlefields, and that's swords and spears doing what swords and spears do. I think that's
the one thing I don't like. Yes, it's a war novel, and there are definitely passages where like this is definitely a war book, and I'm like, I'll just read through this.
And like I think the series is overall pretty hopeful, right? Like it's as much about the characters healing and dealing with their ailments, right? But you can't
ailments, obstacles.
You can't get to that without also wallowing in a little bit of the abjectness they found themselves in.
And sometimes that's just really so good to wallow.
I don't know. Sometimes it's not a good thing for me, where I'm just like, I have anxiety, and like sometimes it's just I have a hard enough time just wallowing in my own issues, and I don't want to compound that.
So different.
I know.
So different.
And isn't that beautiful?
They were frustrating. One of those.
Yeah, one of those. Something like those.
Yes.
I feel like second tier content warnings. Like I've seen like crap online where people are shitting on the books because the series has rampant violence, sexism, racism, discrimination, xenophobia.
It's a reflection of our life, the real world.
Well, yes and no, right? Because, and the other, the series is very popular, gets recommended a lot in like, fantasy listicles or articles, or, it's just a very popular series and gets recommended a lot, right? I didn't
realize listicles was a thing. Like that's like an actual word.
Yeah. But like if you're used to say like a YA type handling of the world being imperfect, or like a Harry Potter type thing, then it's going to be pretty jarring to go to a grittier sort of world where even the good guys are intensely flawed and products of an intensely flawed society. The thing that I go back to once is like, and it's like, it's been months since this was put on Reddit, but it lives rent free in my head, where someone was, they did not finish The Way of Kings, and you people all suck for recommending this because, all of these heroes of the story actively promote slavery. And it's like, well, I mean, I guess maybe like a little bit, but like it's so different, and like it's so more complicated than just that's so reductive, and like requires you to not even read into what's going on in the story, right? Like, it's not supposed to be.
I don't know why you look on the internet.
But what I'm trying to say is that, like, if this is your entry point to the Cosmere, and maybe if this is, if you're trying to get into fantasy for the first time or something, welcome, but, know to expect that, starting out imperfect, and, the characters do grow and change and develop, right?
Okay.
And even their worldviews change.
You're going to get it very...
Sorry, getting a little preachy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say intense, but preachy what did come into my brain. This is solidly an adult fantasy.
It is. It really is.
Yes.
The world is a mess, and Dalinar just needs to rule it.
Okay.
I think I'm hilarious.
I already mentioned. Okay, so all right, we'll do the prologue discussion for the end. That way, I'm gonna get so upset about prologues.
I was about to say you're already getting upset.
I'm so upset.
Why don't you get out of your system?
No. We'll leave it. We'll leave it. No.
Let's talk about the preludes. The prelude.
Okay, there's so many.
The first chapter.
All right, there are so many preludes.
They're like the first 5 chapters all have different points of views, right?
Okay, yes, but not all. Okay, but there's a prelude to the entire series.
Yep.
And then there's a prelude.
No, there's a prologue. It's a prelude. Prologue. First chapter.
What's the difference between a prelude and a prologue?
I don't fucking know, but that's just what they're titled in the book.
Okay. So you have yes. So the prelude.
It's from the point of view of a character called Kalak, and it's set like what 5,000 years ago or something.
Yes. So that is when we have had friends read this story for the first time. They always come back and say that first prelude chapter was so confusing.
Disagree. And like, I
what do you mean you disagree?
It.
Okay.
I think you're overselling it. Not everyone said that,
but people have said that.
That's because they know you feel that way. Anyway, but I think it's that first chapter is disconnected from the rest of the book. There's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't make sense and won't make sense until after the 3rd book. Right? I like reading it for the vibes.
So that's your recommendation.
I read it for the vibes. Don't like try to pick it apart. Whatever.
Don't try to understand it. Just read it for the vibes.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that advice.
Yeah. Good advice.
But it's also, if you're looking for someone to say it out loud, it's okay to skip that prelude on your first read.
It's for funsies. It's whatever.
You are not going to miss anything at all if you skip that chapter in your first reading.
And that's, I think, because there is an important vibe there, right? Because you're introduced to the concept of heralds, right? Where there's
but you have no idea. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't. It
does matter because you realize in that first chapter what they did and how it becomes different in the mythology of the world, and that's a key tension I feel like through that first book. Even the first time I was reading, I was like,
okay. I feel like with my first reading, I only got 10% of the book.
And you tell me I don't get shit when I read.
There's a lot in it.
All right. Okay. Yeah, but I'm just saying.
I think it's hard.
Reading fast.
I think it's hard. Remember the first time you read something.
After I've read it 10 times? Maybe.
So if you're looking for permission, you can skip that. That's all I want to say. And then to your point, yes, the first 5 chapters, 5 sections that you read are all from different viewpoints, different times.
Different times. There's literally thousands of years.
And it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I forget where B Money, talked about this, but he did it in some interview or something where he needed to have a rapport built up with his audience to be able to tackle something so ambitious. And because he already had that rapport, he felt like, well, I can just, I can, because people know what to expect out of Brandon Sanderson. You can throw at a lot of different characters. People like Brandon Sanderson. His audience does tend to like it for the extensive world building. So give them lots of world building, right? So like that's part of it. It's like it's a very Brando Sando thing.
And I think this is the only series where he like very purposely is trying to show you points from like many different countries to give you kind of.
Yeah, I think that. Well, you could.
There's so many different the characters, start in so many different places, like in the world.
You could, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is a lot less ambitious. There's only 2 pointed characters there,
Right.
but they are, very much night and day.
Yes, but I'm talking. We've got like 3 locations.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
So it's a lot at the beginning, but
That's kind of a nice segue into the setting. Do you want to talk about that? I got some notes on setting.
Yes, let's talk about the setting here. So think about a pre-industrial, farming type community.
I was going to take it a step back.
Okay.
I would say this is probably the most alien out of the fantasy books in the Cosmere. There's just so much that is very different from Earth. And I'm trying to think if I've read a fantasy book with a stranger sort of environment, and I'm drawing a blank. Certainly not one that I've read recently. So I guess, before we even get into what society is like, the planet is called Roshar and is dominated by its weather, right? And I think the most notable thing is the frequent but not exactly periodic high storms that blow over the continent. They're like magically supercharged hurricanes that always blow from east to west and powerful enough to destroy almost everything. Like there's no soil on the planet because it all just gets blown away, right?
Except for one location.
Yeah. But instead, they've got like some the water that's dropped by high storms includes like some kind of filth that they call Kremen world, but it's kind of it's like a clay type thing, right? And the whole world is basically has to accommodate the high storms. There's no soil, the flora and fauna are all, everything has an exoskeleton basically, right? Except for a few, like humans and stuff. But everything from the tiny little kremlings to the giant monstrous great shells are all, everything's crabs, right? And even the plants, right? It gets beaten over your head a few times, but like the grass, the trees, the vines, they don't grow in soil, but they're mobile. They hide whenever something touches them because they need to be able to hide when the high storm comes, right?
Yeah, so I don't know enough about botany, but there are plants out there. There are plants out there in the real world that have defensive mechanisms where if they are brushed or touched, they will close up
like
on
a Venus
themselves.
flytrap.
Yeah, I mean that it closes its things, but I think there are still other plants that actually like kind of completely close. So there are kind of plants that do that in the real world, but this is every plant on this planet does that. So when the high storm comes, it closes in on itself to protect itself against the storm. But yes, that's the setting. But
there's more that's also just kind of strange, right? Like it threw me off the first few times I read it. There are spirits that just kind of show up. They pop in and out of existence, and they're called spren. There's emotion spren that appear whenever people have strong emotions like anger, fear, love, shame, as well as like nature spren that show up with things in nature like wind and rain. People mostly ignore them, but it also like shapes things because if you're feeling strong emotions, the sprens you can't, it doesn't matter how stoic you are, you got to tell, right? And there's just like a whole grab bag of other fantastical elements, right? There's magic swords that cut through anything but can disappear when they're not needed. Magic plate armor that gives you superpowers. Gems that glow with magic light. Immortal heroes, maybe villains that reborn when they die. But I think those other grab bag of things are really explained pretty well.
Well, that's in the legend.
Right, yeah.
Can I talk about the humans now?
But I feel like it's important to know like that kind of like how the world.
Do you think we're not going to get around to that?
I think.
So there are humans on this planet. And they are kind of pre-industrial level. Where a lot, there's a farming class. They don't have kind of any advanced technology except for things that they call fabrials. So during the high storms that we mentioned, they have little glass. There are little glass beads with gemstones in the center, and the high storm will recharge these gemstones with light.
If you're familiar with like Final Fantasy, Magitech and like fabrials are basically the same thing.
So I have no idea what that reference is, but I'm sure it works. So there is an upper class. Some of the major cities do have running water through the use of these fabrials. So the fabrials use Stormlight to power these machines. But we are kind of at a transition point where the fabrials are becoming more to the lower class from the upper class.
I almost think of it like you've got a scientific revolution going on. They don't talk about it in those terms, but like
that's what's going on in the background.
Yeah, that's very much going on in the background of the series.
There's definitely not modern travel. No. They're still doing like carts that are pulled by animals.
Yeah.
So we talked about this book has 3 main viewpoints. The first is a young male slave. Then,
yeah.
The first time that we are introduced to Kaladin, he is a slave.
Soldier.
Soldier, you're right. And then the next chapter, he's a slave. The second major viewpoint is a really young and naive woman hoping to do something super stupid in the big city. The third is a reformed, bloodthirsty general.
Reformed is a strong, I don't know, I'd argue that one.
I would definitely say reformed.
He's on a journey of meaning. Yeah.
And at the beginning, there is no magic.
Well,
I'm just saying that the world,
the world is magical. There's fantastical elements.
There are, yes. But as far as if you're looking for a Brandon magic system, that is not, there are other series where those are kind of fully known and understood in world at the beginning.
Interesting.
And that is not this book.
Interesting. Okay. The prologue being an exception. Well, both the prelude and the prologue being exceptions to that. You got mucho magic in those.
Yes.
And then also like there's magical technology that they understand very well. That although
you're very caught up in minute details.
I'm just you're making bold claims.
I am.
Bold claims. They're not quite right.
This is a pre-read episode.
Just saying. I don't want anybody to say you lied to me, Nick.
All the things to understand about the culture, the human culture in this book.
And then don't read. Oh, sorry. I had to jump in with that one.
Masculine and feminine arts. So there's a great divide between men and women in this series. Men and women are supposed to eat different foods. Men eat all of the spicy foods, and women eat all of the non-spicy food.
The sweet foods. So men can eat bland things. It's just not sweet.
Women read and write. Men do not.
They're illiterate. That's right.
So anytime a man wants to quote-unquote read a book, it is normally a female.
They have their wife read it to them.
It is normally a female relative that reads it.
Or an ardent scholar, religious person.
Yeah. Women have a safe hand.
That's right. They need to be modest. They need to keep themselves covered. But only their left hand.
So kind of think of it like how we had, it used to be modest that women would show modesty by covering their ankles.
Not just their ankles.
So instead of ankles, it's the left hand.
Yeah. Which is also one of those very funny things. I love that as a low effort meme where it's not safe for Vorans on Creme posting if it's got a woman with exposed left hand. And sometimes it's like, don't hold this picture up to a mirror.
Okay.
I love it. It's a low effort meme, but it's very funny, in my opinion.
And then, as you mentioned, there are shard blades. So these are these magical swords that can cut through anything that is non-living, if it cuts through a living.
It can cut through anything, even a soul.
Yes. So if it cuts through a person, it kills the person. Their eyes are burned out, but it doesn't leave a mark otherwise. And then once the person is dead, then it gets treated like any other object, and then the blade can cut it. You'll get to see that. But everybody is after these shard blades. So if you have one, you're a pretty important person. Some other kind of background things. The main country that we're concerned with is called Illiterate. And they are very war-prone people. And naturally, they're in the middle of a war for this book. The prologue shows you the beginning of that war. The main story is set 6 years after the prologue. Just keep that in mind. Anything else that's timeline related, don't worry about it too much on your first read. And the book is broken up into parts with interludes. So interludes is not something that I've seen in any other person's novels besides.
Oh, really?
Not that I can recall.
They're in the Kingkiller Chronicles for sure. Because that's when both stops telling the story. Anyway, we're not talking about Kingkiller Chronicles. Like, it's a thing.
Okay.
They even had on the Odyssey, right? There's like at least one interlude in the Odyssey.
It's not very common. So there's sections of the books where it's the main story, and then like it's almost like the author takes a break and decides like, oh, I'm going to do a couple chapters from some other random viewpoints, and then I'm going to get back to the rest of,
I'm going to get hot on some details here.
I know it's not random. It's on purpose. It's still related to the story.
It's also not random in that the last interlude each time is always from Zeth's point of view. And also
in every set of interludes in every book?
No, in this book, the last one is always Zeth. And then the interludes, they help develop the world. They're showing what's going on in other parts of the world, but also like events that either relate to what's happened on screen or will happen on screen. There's people who talk about online who talk about, oh, I skipped the interludes, or I didn't understand it, so I didn't really pay attention. It's like, well,
a lot of those interludes are confusing.
They are, because it's like all characters you don't care about yet, but it's like,
but you don't even have to like try to connect it to the story for it to be a good.
You read them
a good read. Like they still like even if you just took them out of the book and just had them to read, like they still read well.
Yes, and like I especially like because that's how you get Zeth's story arc, right? And like he has an arc, even though he's not one of the main characters, right? Anyway,
Zeth is the name of a character.
Yes,
and we can't really talk about the magic system yet because that would spoil some things.
Yeah, I mean, but it's, like I said, Brando Sando does such a great job explaining magic systems in general, and especially it's in the prologue with Zeth's son Venturo, wore white the day he was to kill a king, which also
that's explaining a subsection of the magic, but sure.
Yeah, but like it like that's as much as you need to know for like the first 1.5 books, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And also that line, Zeth son Naturo wore white on the day he was to kill a king, often being in fandom. A lot of
it's very much the
it's a
munching. My name is
Ishmael.
No, Princess Bride.
Oh, hello. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. I was okay. Whatever.
A little bit of that vibe. Book themes. There's definitely dealing with your shit, growing up. Fighting against the man.
I was about to say, it's like persistence in the face of like the cosmic unfairness of it all, right?
Being broken.
Yeah.
Doing what's right.
Or
exploring how to do things the right way.
I was about to say, because there's a whole lot of things in here that this might as well just be virtue ethics for dummies.
Which you love. I
love it, and we're not going to get to the real meat of that until several books in, and I love it so much.
Also trust. I feel like there's a lot of trust themes.
There's a lot, but I mean, I think the most in your face one is just mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And, how do you know what's right? Doing what's right, that kind of stuff.
And in this series in particular, Brandon does a much better job at representing different types of
I was
people.
about to say, he does a really good job of representation in the series.
Yes. You want to talk about cameos?
Not as such. I'd rather lump that in under stuff for rereaders or like,
Well, I was going to say, well, you had advice.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do advice. If you are a busy person and you don't think that you can sit down and read this book in a timely manner, I would highly recommend the audiobook.
Kate Redding and Michael Kramer do an awesome job narrating this one. Sometimes, they
don't always agree on how to pronounce the names.
Even words like palanquin or palanquin.
And Thaddeus versus Sidious.
Yeah.
It's Thaddeus.
Taravangian. No, it's Taravangian.
Taravangian.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, good luck spelling those things, guys.
But the audiobook is very good, and I find it the easiest way to, finish the very large book in a timely manner.
Yeah, right. It's just less intimidating.
Yeah. But I am excited because this is the very first time that I'm reading the physical.
I was about to say, because I've read it on Kindle a few times.
I like marking up the book, and I can't. It's hard to make notes.
Yeah, all right. The notes are really hard on the ebook, but yeah, you're right.
If I'm not making notes, then I love the Kindle. But if I want to try to mark up the book or it's got to be a physical book. It's worth getting through it. This is my favorite book. It's an awesome book.
Yeah. If you are on the lookout for little details, I want to say, keep an eye out for mentions of strange Kremlings.
If you're rereading,
especially if you've already read through Edge Dancer or Dawn Shard, you'll have a more understanding of what those signify. Anytime someone mentions 10 heartbeats,
pay attention.
Pay attention and keep track of that. We've already talked a little bit about the interludes and how they are, a little hard to get through sometimes. But part of that is also because that's like where a lot of the Cosmere connections happen. Whether as the main characters in the interlude or just they show up in there. So if you're trying to spot the world purposes, keep an eye on the interludes. Also, like we said, like certain chapters get revisited from different points of view. I think it's interesting to try to keep track of who is where, when, especially in the prologue, but also that first chapter where Sen is right? Because that one does get revisited from a different point of view later, and that one's especially interesting because he's anyway, whatever. We'll talk about that one in the post read. Anyway, is there anything else you want to talk about? I feel like we've already gone on for a while.
Yeah, I'm out of notes.
All right. Thanks for podcasting with me, dear.
Thank you.
And thanks, audience, for audiencing to us. I don't know, man. I'm just, because we've got listeners. I just earlier this morning uploaded literally dozens of videos onto YouTube. Not all of them have our faces or whatever. But anyway, whatever. Thanks, audience, for audiencing to us.
It's a good catch-all. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I forgot we're in video.
Yeah. So we're on YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, Cosmere Casual, CosmereCasual@gmail.com. Reach out to us. Let us know you're listening. Talk to us. Our intro and outro music is licensed through Tribe of Noise. The artist is Ketsa, and the song is Odyssey.
And until next time, keep your wits about you.
And I'm so excited to have that make sense as a pun. Very excited. Very excited. Love the puns.